So first, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be virtually with you today, and thanks very much for to Paolo. So the topic is how to improve access to cancer screening for the most vulnerable women, and reaching the enriched population and the need for personalized communication strategies. I have nothing to disclose relevant to this presentation unless, and Paolo already told you that I'm coordinating the H2020 funded Civic Screen project, which is improving cervical cancer screening efficacy in vulnerable women, and for which Radio Emilia is a valuable partner, and particularly Paolo. So I'm sure you all know that, but you know that cervical cancer is not a disease of the past. It's mostly a disease of the poor in most of the country worldwide. So if we want to improve and to promote cervical cancer screening, we need to communicate and try to reach the people who need to engage with cervical cancer screening. And we know that cervical cancer screening incidence and mortality are highly sensitive to prevention and control effort, and that appropriate vaccination and screening may decrease incidence and mortality by at least 80% in an appropriate population of women. And on the other hand, we know that even in well-performing countries, where you have 80% of women participating to the program, we know that 20% of women who do not take part of the screening program represent more than 50% of the cases and of the mortality. There are some cultural and socioeconomic diversity of the target group. So we have heterogeneous group and heterogeneous results, meaning that we need to support women to make informed choice about cervical cancer screening, to respect the autonomy, and acknowledge that screening may have harms and benefit. Even at the time of network, social media, where there is a lot of information turning around, we know that even people who have heard about HPV, for example, and we know that the introduction of the vaccine has dramatically increased the knowledge about HPV, but the knowledge of importance is still poor. And that was a study which assessed the knowledge and found that in UK, US, and Australia, one of the women who have heard about HPV did not know that condoms reduce the risk of getting HPV. One half did not know that most sexually active people would get HPV at some point in their lives. And nearly all did not know that HPV usually doesn't need any treatment. Why do we need personalized and communication? This is a study that was conducted in the US and showed that among the most common reason for not to attend cervical cancer screening was a lack of knowledge. And if you compare the 2005 and 2018, they have observed a very significant decrease in the lack of access, so roughly half, reduced by half, but at the same time, an increase in the lack of knowledge from 45% to 55%, and also an increase, almost a doubling, of women not receiving recommendation from healthcare professionals about timely screening, meaning that really it's really a matter of communicating and disseminating the need for appropriate screening. We know that, and it is once again well known, that low socioeconomic status is associated with cervical cancer screening. So this is a map, a heat map of a New York area. You have the Queens, Brooklyn, Manhattan. On the left hand, you have the incidence, and the yellow is for the highest incidence, above 12.5. And on the right hand, you have the neighborhood socioeconomic status. And what you can see is that you have almost a perfect match between, if you look, for example, this part of yellow, you have a perfect match of the highest cervical cancer screening incidence and the lowest socioeconomic status. And you can see this on this slide, where you have almost a direct correlation between cervical cancer incidence and neighborhood socioeconomic status. And you see that as the socioeconomic status index decreases, the prevalence of cervical cancer screening increases. There must be some mediators between socioeconomic status and cervical cancer screening. And in this study, what has been shown, so that's the relative risk for cervical cancer screening. If you see that the reference is no formal education, and if you go, as long as you go with an increased level of education, you see that the more educated you are, the most likely you are to attend cervical cancer screening, and you have a more than fourfold increase for the one who have college, university, and postgraduate. So the question is, what do we need personalized communication strategy? Because there are some patient-level barriers, which include socioeconomic, cultural, and psychological factors. And the fact that there are an unequal distribution of barriers, meaning that may explain why we have higher cancer mortality and morbidity among the most disadvantaged people. And health literacy has been shown as being a predictor of inverse health status. If you look at this slide, so those are the connection between health literacy and cervical cancer screening adherence. On the left panel, you have the unadjusted relative risk. On the right panel, you have the adjusted, and you see that people who have an adequate health literacy have a 64% increase in the likelihood of cervical cancer screening adherence. So meaning that we know that low socioeconomic status people have an increased risk of not being regular attenders to cervical cancer screening. We know that health literacy has been associated with health status, has been associated with cervical cancer screening adherence, meaning that we need to develop a specific communication tool strategy if we want to reach the harder to reach women and the most vulnerable groups. Here you see, so this is the pool prevalence estimate of low health literacy in European members. You see that in average, you have 42% of people who can be classified as having a low health literacy. Italy is right in the middle, so right in the European average, 42%. France has 41%, so more than one half of the French citizens have a low literacy. So that is really of importance if you consider that almost, even in Italy, that almost one half, in France is more than one half of the population and of the citizens of your own country who have a low health literacy. The point is that when we are trying to develop communication strategy, we need to understand what the people want to reach, either for cervical cancer screening, but that's the same for any health intervention. We need to try to understand, as a health professional, what the population is expecting. I'm currently running a randomized clinical trial in France in two mainland departments, the two overseas departments, trying to improve cervical cancer screening adherence for women living in the most deprived area and not having responded to the invitation. As part of this randomized clinical trial, we also conducted a qualitative survey, and we have conducted a first survey in the Réunion Island, where we have asked the women before starting the intervention about their knowledge of cervical cancer screening. And what we have understood is first that the knowledge on disease, as well as screening practices and recommendation, was minimal and insufficient. Of course, we have observed a high knowledge level on cervical cancer screening and cervical cancer among women who had a relative or close friend who have had HPV or cervical cancer, and we'll see that later. So these people, the people who have been affected by the disease, may be a good peers for the communication. Their erroneous knowledge. So some women claim that they think that cervical cancer is of genetic or family origin. Only 2/3 of women knew that Pap smear is for cervical cancer screening. The majority felt that they had not been adequately informed about the purpose of undergoing a smear test or an HPV test. Most of the women said they pay attention to reminders from health professionals and screening invitation. And something that was really surprising to me, because in the Réunion Island they have many people speak Creole, so that is a local language, and so my assumption is that they would prefer to receive invitation letter written in Creole that instead of written in French. And in fact, they said that that reminding letters act as a trigger, even for women who are illiterate and have difficulties. And they prefer to receive the letters in French because it looks more official than receiving invitation written in the language they're more likely to be able to read. So the first, I would say the first point is that we need to increase health literacy. So that means that if we communicate toward the population, we need to make sure that, or at least to increase the probability of being understood, and develop new tools, not only to try to adapt our way of speaking to the people, but also to try to know whether or not what we have been explaining has been understood. So the first is you may ask an open-ended question to assess the patient understanding of written materials, including prescription, meaning that you need to really try to understand if the patient is able to express what is understood. You can use the teach-back communication. So when you explain something to the patient, and then you ask the patient to explain it back to you using his or her own words. You can use the show-back when teaching a patient to use a device, perform particular tasks. That can be the test, for example, for sampling for cervical cancer screening. You can hand your patient written material upside down while discussing it and observe whether or not they turn it right side up, meaning that they're really paying attention to the material you're discussing with them. You need to use simple language. You know, for example, I'm just going to use one example. That's this one. You can say fat instead of lipids. So really, you need to try to use the most simple words you can hear. You can speak more slowly than I'm currently doing, or when providing instruction, be respectful, clear without being patronizing, use graphic and pictures instead of long written instruction, and provide information at an appropriate grade level. Of course, you need to try to, even if that's not always easy, to have an assumption of your patient health literacy to be able to adapt your language to the patient you're speaking about. I'm now going to focus on the use of social media, because that is something that is perceived as being a very smart way to advise on different cancers, and that is something that is widely being used. So I don't know if you have heard about this campaign, so Smear for Smear. So this was a campaign where, in fact, women were asked to put on lipsticks, then to smear the lipstick, take a selfie, and send the selfie with nominating a friend. There have been several rounds of this Smear for Smear to promote cervical cancer screening. This was an analysis of the because about on the selfie that were sent, only roughly 1/3 were really selfie communicating on the promotion for cervical cancer screening. And what are the factors the most strongly associated with the use of sensitizing suite, directly encouraging people to go for smear tests, evocation of the importance of smear tests without any precision, reminder of the preventive aspect of the smear. And you can see that it is mostly the women who experience an abnormal smear test for most of the points. So so that was mostly the women who experienced an abnormal smear test were the most likely to really communicate on the need to go for cervical cancer screening. So why am I saying that? It's once again because you may have thousands of people communicating because there is a campaign on the network, on the social media, and we will see that further, that the communication may not always be appropriate. So there are some key elements to consider when we want to go for a social media campaign. The gender. So that means that we do not always, and not all of us use the same social media. For example, YouTube may have reached more men, and Facebook may have reached more women. Meaning that if you want to reach men or women, you may not put the same interest in different social media. So you need to match the media with the target audience by gender, ethnicity, subgroup, and adapt the wording to your target audience. You need to make sure that the message that are being sent really promote cancer prevention. This was an analysis of the 2013 Canadian November campaign, where 84%. So do you know this campaign for to promote prostate cancer prevention is about mustache, and 84% on tweets were on non-health topic, mustache growing, and only 60% of the tweets were on health topic, and only 0.6% of the tweets analyzed were about cancer. So that means that if you want to, once again, have a network campaign, you need to make sure that you're truly disseminating the key information you want to disseminate about the prevention of cancer. And you need to measure the campaign, for example, for cervical cancer screening. You may monitor level of engagement. So you may have a low level and medium level of engagement, being liking the tweets, retweeting or redirecting the post, and role influencer. And if you want to really measure the level and high level of improvement, you need to try to measure whether or not the campaign has an impact on the improvement in screening intention or attendance. I'm going to discuss a paper that was published quite recently, assessing the use of social media to promote cervical cancer screening, and to try to convince you that you may be harmful when you want to be positive, or you may not adapt your communication strategy to the reality of the people not attending the cervical cancer screening. So this is the first extract post on Facebook, created by a local authority in 2018. The wording was Cervical Cancer Prevention Week 2088. A simple test really could save your life. Come on, lady, no excuses. And so, what are the wording? Simple procedure with this position against the potential of life-threatening nature of the disease, claiming that there were no excuses. It's a way of delegitimizing any reason why women may not be willing to be screening for cervical cancer. So that means that if you do not want to go for cervical cancer screening, that is your own responsibility. I do not try to understand whether or not there are some good reasons which prevent you from attending screening. Another post, once again by local authority, Louise pledged her support for cervical screening. Get over any embarrassment. The nurse has seen it all before. The test is quick and painless, and could save your life. So the personalization of the statement, Louise says, so it's not something that is anonymized. We give a name, so it's like if someone real were really speaking, and that's also a way to decrease the credibility of classical objection, the embarrassment over the intimacy of the procedure, and the fear for pain. Once again, I think it's one of the maybe the most interesting, because this post that I'm going to discuss is in line with some of the measures that have been implemented to improve, because we thought they were likely to improve cervical cancer screening. So this post shared once again by the local authority, out of our appointment are available in place, name, in the locality. You can make the appointment via your one GP, more info. So what does it mean? It means that the non-attenders, so the target audience of this campaign, is the busy women who cannot make appointment during normal working, instead of women who are too embarrassed or have other reason to attend cervical cancer. And the intended target of the tweet are really women who have commitment or responsibility, meaning that it marginalizes women from socioeconomically deprived background, who are more likely to work shift rather than traditional office hours, 9 to 5, and who are also 80% more likely to be diagnosed with cervical cancer. And it has been shown that women from socially deprived area state that arranging childcare is a bigger practical barrier than the time of the day that appointments are being offered. So clearly, saying that you have out-of-office appointment is not a way to target the most vulnerable women and the women who are the most likely not to attend regular cervical cancer screening. Some of the main criticism of the use of social media to promote cervical cancer is what we call the othering. The othering is that we, the one who know that cervical cancer screening save lives and attend it regularly, and speak to the others, the one who have not understood its benefit. Denying the legitimacy of hesitancy. Why wouldn't you take the test? So that means that you don't take the test is that you're someone who is foolish, because it's obvious that you need to understand the test, and everyone should understand that it is beneficial. Placing the poster into a morally higher position than the non-attenders when leaking on attending screening with rationality and using statistics. If you say, okay, cervical cancer screening can save 80% of the life, so you use statistics, and in fact, once again, it's you put yourself in a position of superiority versus the people who are trying to reach. Shaming the non-attenders. They do not know what is good. That is, once again, a post that was found on the web. So that is the most ridiculous things I've never heard. No excuse. Attend your smear. It will literally save your life. Reduce risk, attend your smear. We spent money for them. Whilst I agree it's good, isn't also sad that a campaign which costs money is the only way some women will go for the smear. I personally found it utterly bizarre that they will have a smear. It might save your life. So once again, shaming the non-attenders is something that is sometimes used in the social media campaign, and really I don't think it's a good way to promote and to communicate to promote cancer screening. While health promotion campaigns should be designed to empower individuals to make informed choice, at times they can lead to stigmatization of those who do not conform. That's what I've already explained. And I think the future campaign should focus more on understanding the reason why women do not attend without diminishing them. And really, if some people do not participate into cervical, breast, or colorectal cancer, there must be some reason, and we need to try to understand them. Can we increase health literacy? Because we have seen that I've told you that there is a very high prevalence of low health literacy in Europe, and that health literacy is associated with low socioeconomic status, and that it may be one of the mediator in the connection between low socioeconomic status and high cervical cancer incidence. So we need to develop intervention aimed at increasing health literacy in people with low level, to enhance the capacity of healthcare system and health profession to customize patient health education and meet the population needs. And we need to develop a dedicated communication plan strategy and communication tools. And sometimes we need to develop as many tools as we have target groups in mind. And we need to improve the ability of patients to communicate with the healthcare staff. In conclusion, communication strategies should build on knowledge of the reason for non-participation and consider women's lives and health trajectory, especially sexual trauma. We need to understand women's expectation, which can sometimes be counterintuitive. That's what I told you about the qualitative survey we have been conducted in the Réunion Island, where women prefer to receive an invitation in official language of the country. They need to be co-constructed with those for whom they are intended. And remember, the people who are most likely to be good peers for the communication are the ones who have been personally affected by the condition, so cervical cancer, or at least by being tested positive for HPV. They need to allow for an informed and positive choice. Once again, you do not go for a preventive measure just because you're feeling shameful because you do not want to do that. We need to avoid personalistic or stigmatizing approaches. They need to be differentiated and adapted according to the medium use and its main audience, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, blah, blah, blah. And we need to take care of those who do not have access or do not master the digital tools. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Marc, for your intervention.